Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm proud today to be joined by Senate President Don Harmon, as well as leaders on both sides of the aisle, including Senate President Pro Tem Bill Cunningham, Leader Sue Rezin, Leader Linda Holmes, as well as Leader Jay Hoffman, Leader Marcus Evans, and Representatives Mike Marin and Dan Ugasti. I'm proud to announce that negotiators have reached a historic agreement to eliminate the pandemic-induced UI trust fund debt, replenish the fund for the future, protect benefits for working families, and further fuel Illinois' strong economic trajectory. Republicans and Democrats intend to deliver a historic state investment of $1.8 billion, $1.36 billion of which will pay off the remaining balance of federal advances, and $450 million of which will serve as an interest-free loan to the Unemployment Insurance Trust Fund. The entire interest-free loan will be repaid from the fund over the next 10 years, and all of those repayments will go straight to the state's rainy day fund. This bipartisan agreement eliminates the final portion of the $4.5 billion of debt forced upon our state during the pandemic. It will save Illinois businesses hundreds of millions of dollars over the next decade, and it will save taxpayers $20 million in interest costs that would otherwise have been due next September. The resolution of this matter alleviates a burden looming over the heads of workers and businesses alike, and crucially, it's been done with no reduction to the standard number of weeks of unemployment benefits and with no reduction to the amount of benefits a person can claim. We've restored our unemployment system to good working order after the most serious economic downturn since the Great Depression. Just 3 weeks ago, we had an election in which it seemed like candidates from each party could agree on absolutely nothing. But one of the great things that Illinois has going for it is that when everyone commits to bipartisanship, on a good day, we can find common ground despite our differences. Today is one of those good days. Republicans and Democrats have come together to deliver for working families and for employers. I want to commend our business and labor partners, represented here today by President and CEO of the Illinois Retail Merchants Association, Rob Carr, and Pat Devaney on behalf of the AFL-CIO, for their perseverance and their leadership. And I want to thank Deputy Governor Andy Minar and IDES Director Kristen Richards and the rest of our team, along with our partners in the General Assembly. This is the strongest UI trust fund replenishment in memory, and it was achieved through the agreed bill process that for decades has been successful in getting big things done for the people of Illinois. Meanwhile, good things have been happening for Illinois over the last 6 months. We've achieved historic record low unemployment claims. Payrolls are up. Our state's GDP surpassed $1 trillion for the first time ever. And we've employed 770,000 more people since the bottom of the pandemic recession. Job listings in Illinois are about twice the number of people who are looking for jobs. It's a tight labor market, and Illinoisans are back to work. Remember, it was just 2 years ago that the United States skyrocketed to record unemployment as our economy was flipped on its head. The Illinois Department of Employment Security paid out over $38 billion in federal and state benefits to those who desperately needed help, the kind of emergency the unemployment system was never built to handle, whether at the federal level or for any one of the 50 states. And in the face of the emergency, like most states, Illinois borrowed federal funds to ensure no workers would fall through the cracks. When we received the one-time federal ARPA dollars, we paid down $2.7 billion of the UI Trust Fund debt. With our economic and labor market recovery, earlier this fall, I announced an additional $450 million payment on that debt. And today, we complete the mission of extinguishing this debt. Government is at its best when we work together to solve problems. And thanks to leaders in business and labor and bipartisanship in the legislature, Illinois is stronger today. Thank you, and with that, I'd like to turn it over to Senate President Don Harmon.
Thank you, Governor. Thank you for your leadership on this issue. In my brief time as Senate President, what I'm most proud of is the work we've done to restore fiscal stability. This agreement is yet another step forward. I applaud everyone involved for coming to the table with workable ideas and a desire to be part of the solution. I especially want to thank the members of the Senate Democratic Caucus and our leadership team, Senator Linda Holmes and Senator Bill Cunningham, for representing our caucus so ably. We've got more work to do, and I look forward to continuing to work with everyone in this room to keep Illinois on the right track. And with that, it's my privilege to introduce a key participant in this, the President of the Illinois Retail Merchants, Rob Carr.
Thank you, President Harmon. Thank you, Governor. Good afternoon. I'm Rob Carr, here today representing the joint employers. The joint employers include, in alphabetical order, the Associated General Contractors of Illinois, Chicagoland Chamber of Commerce, Illinois Chamber of Commerce, Illinois Manufacturers Association, the Illinois Retail Merchants Association, and the National Federation of Independent Business. We're here today in a testament to the success of the agreed bill process, which has ensured stakeholder engagement and bipartisan support for legislation impacting employees and employers since its inception in the early 1980s. Overseen by the Office of the Governor and the 4 legislative caucuses, Illinois' agreed bill process has ensured consistency and bipartisan engagement in what can be an extremely contentious and expensive issue area. As a result of the global COVID pandemic, the unemployment insurance systems in every state were confronted by unprecedented challenges separate and apart from normal economic cycles. This unprecedented crisis required unprecedented solutions. Without federal assistance in the form of ARPA monies and the utilization of a portion of the state's surplus to pay back the $4.8 billion in borrowing necessary to ensure unemployed workers receive their benefits uninterrupted, Illinois employers would have faced crushing tax increases. Following years of disruption and myriad ongoing challenges, it would have been an added burden many employers would have been unable to bear. Passage of this agreement helps ease pressure, ensure greater stability in the unemployment insurance systems, and means Illinois employers will face at least $900 million less in taxes over 5 years than they would have otherwise. This will also mean we are able to avoid billions of dollars in borrowing costs. On behalf of the joint employers, I would like to thank our partners in organized labor, represented by Pat Devaney, Governor Pritzker and his team, particularly Deputy Governor Andy Manar, the 4 legislative leaders, and their representatives of the 4 who they sent of the 4 caucuses, Senators Cunningham, Holmes, Resin, and Stoller, and Representatives Evans, Hoffman, Marin, and Ugasti. Finally, I would like to thank IDES Director Kristen Richards and her team for the invaluable service they provide the agreed bill participants, not only during these negotiations, but day to day. IDES has a long and distinguished history of invaluable bipartisan service to this process and the state, and certainly went above and beyond as we tackled together what we hope is a once-in-a-lifetime event. And now it's my pleasure to introduce the Secretary-Treasurer of the AFL-CIO, Pat Devaney. Pat.
Thank you very much, Rob, and good afternoon to everyone. I'm very proud to be here on behalf of the hardworking men and women across our state who've endured great hardships over the last several years. The unemployment agreed bill being proposed to the General Assembly this week is great news for business owners still attempting to recover from the impact of the pandemic, and the workers who rely on the Unemployment Insurance Trust as a safety net when displaced from their jobs. This agreed bill is another example of bold actions taken by Governor Pritzker and the General Assembly to strengthen the state's financial position and create a friendly environment for business to thrive in Illinois while also protecting the most vulnerable workers in our state. Due to the fiscal discipline this administration and its legislative partners have displayed over the last 4 years, we're now able to pay off the last of the unemployment trust deficit and provide a cash infusion into the trust to better prepare the system for future periods of high unemployment. Not only will this proposed legislation wipe out the existing debt caused by the pandemic, it also provides structural unemployment insurance funding reforms that will provide greater solvency for the trust fund now and in the future. This is good news for business owners, workers, and taxpayers. I'd like to offer a special thanks to Rob Carr and our business partners, of course, Governor Pritzker and the Senate President and the Speaker and all the legislative leaders who have joined us here today, but particularly the time and effort that IDES Director Kristen Richards put into is much appreciated. Deputy Governor Andy Menard for quarterbacking this very difficult and lengthy agreed bill process, and also to leaders Linda Holmes and Jay Hoffman for bringing all of the stakeholders together to put this agreed bill forward. We look forward to the passage of this bipartisan initiative that will ensure the safety net is intact for future displaced workers and continue to strengthen the financial outlook for Illinois. I'd now like to introduce Leader Linda Holmes.
Thank you, Pat. And thank you, everyone, for being here today. I appreciate it. We have seen firsthand that paying down debt continues to strengthen our fiscal stability. Through a number of sound budgeting decisions we've made in recent years, we've been able to pay back borrowed funds and put Illinois back on track, following years of financial turmoil. The proposal we have outlined before you today further builds upon those smart spending decisions by making changes to the Unemployment Insurance Act that will benefit not just our state's economy, but our state's families for years to come. Through increasing the taxable wage base, increasing the targeted unemployment insurance trust fund solvency balance, establishing terms for an interest-free loan to the UI trust fund, and much more, we're taking another great step in our state's record of continuing financial improvements. As a long-standing advocate to ground Illinois' financial footing, I knew that the only way to fully accomplish our goal was through a collaborative effort. I'm proud to say this isn't just an agreement between Democrats, but this is an agreement between all four caucuses and business and labor representatives. Thank you to the governor's office and all the stakeholders that spent many hours working on this agreement to benefit the people of Illinois. I look forward to seeing this proposal cross the finish line and seeing families across the state feel a sense of security. Thank you. I will now turn this over to Leader Resin.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I'd like to thank the governor and Deputy Governor Andy Menard here, as well as all of my colleagues standing behind me, and the businesses and the representatives for the union. I've been involved in the negotiating talks from nearly the beginning, and I'm happy to be here today as we announce that an agreement has been reached through our business and labor agreed bill process. The process to get here has been long and at times very contentious, but I'm glad to see the state's willingness, and thank you for the state to step up to help minimize the harm and the burden that would have potentially fallen upon Illinois businesses and workers if we sat idly by the sidelines. Without this agreement, Illinois employers would have had to pay nearly $1 billion more in taxes over the next 5 years, and Illinois workers would have faced potentially benefit cuts. Thankfully, we were able to avoid this worst-case scenario thanks to the agreed bill process and the state's assistance. As I've mentioned earlier, it's been a very long and bumpy road to get here, and just like any negotiation, there's some give and take, and we don't all get 100% of what we want, but today we're able to show that we can work together in the best interests of our state and its people. Next, I'd like to introduce Leader Evans.
Well, I can tell you we have more than one meeting, so we didn't agree on everything. And I think the leadership of Governor Pritzker at the top, of course my House Speaker, Emmanuel Chris Welch, and of course the great Don Harmon, those three leaders at the top have set the tone many, many times. We've been in this room to celebrate victories, and we've gotten victories because of collaborative leadership at the top, and that bleeds down to the rest of the assembly. And it creates an energy with our business and labor community that let's get in there and fight. Let's protect our UI system, let's make it fair, and let's compromise. Compromise is becoming a good word again. Not compromising your values, but compromising those little differences to do what? Protect the people of the state of Illinois. And that's what we did today. We all care about something. I'm from the south side of Chicago, south suburbs of Chicago. Maybe I care about that community. Maybe you care about southern Illinois, northern, wherever you care about. The steps that we took today and what we've been taking with fiscal responsibility under the leadership of those three men will create the opportunity to support everything you care about. You care about child care, the money that we save in the fiscal responsibility of today will create the child care opportunities for tomorrow. You care about agriculture, the steps we took today will create the opportunity to save money. So thank you, Governor Pritzker, our leaders, and the next gentleman I introduce again, another champion of working class men and women of Illinois, Leader Jay Hoffman.
Thank you, Marcus. A $4.7 billion deficit, trying to ease the burden on employers, not wanting to cut benefits, getting an agreement in the House and the Senate, Republicans, Democrats, business and labor, and the governor's office. Who would have doubted us, right? But we did it. And we did it because of the leadership of the governor, the speaker, the Senate president, as well as the leadership of business and labor. I'd like to thank Rob Carr and Pat Devaney for their leadership, Director Richards for your work and leadership, as well as Deputy Governor Menard. And the governor, you really provided the impetus for getting us this done and making sure that we did it in agreed fashion. I'd also like to particularly thank my colleagues on the Republican side of the aisle in the Senate and the House. Many times these types of negotiations can become contentious. They weren't. They were professional, and we worked in a bipartisan fashion to get this done. So with that, it's my honor to introduce my colleague, Representative Mike Merritt.
Thank you, Leader Hoffman. Thank you all for being here today. The agreed bill process is a historic process, and it's rather unique to Illinois. And it's been an honor to be part of this process. It's not always been easy. It's been a tough, lengthy process. There's been frustrating times. There's been times when we've had major disagreements that it looked like may stall out the process, maybe even end it. But everybody stuck with the process. Everybody stayed and was dedicated to getting a positive result. Business, labor, my colleagues in both the House and the Senate, in both parties, the governor's office, Deputy Governor Menard, and I would like to hand it to Director Richards and her team. They were always available and there for us with any information that we needed to make these decisions and to have these negotiations. Everybody stuck with it, and as a result, we have a really good product to put on the table that will protect the workers of Illinois and be good for business in Illinois. And that's how it's done. This is an example in good government. This is how it's done. And it's been an honor to be part of this process, and I commend all my colleagues and everybody that was part of this process. And at that point, I would like to bring up my colleague, Representative Dan Ugasti.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks for being here today. I'll make this quick as I'm the last one going to talk to you. I want to thank everyone for their very hard work and long hours and honest commitment to getting this done. You've heard everyone who's been involved, and nothing's changed in the time since I've come up to speak, so I won't mention them again. But everyone put forth a lot of effort, and it was really important that we all do so in order to make this work. Make this as short as possible. We have a good agreement. It's good for labor, it's good for business, it's good for the people of the state of Illinois. And I believe the reason we have such a good agreement is because we did it in a bipartisan manner. And I believe that the best work that will come out of this State House and out of this Capitol is when we do things on a bipartisan manner. Thank you. I'm going to turn it over to Governor Pritzker again for questions.
Bipartisanship is a good way to end the remarks and begin questions, because you can hear the bipartisanship in the rebuilding of Illinois with all the drilling going on. I'm sorry. Well, the federal government has identified, as you know, billions of dollars from the federal creation of the PUA program. And we're still working with the federal government to uncover that and also to prosecute people who fraudulently took money from the system.
What does this do for solvency of the program going forward? I think the fund balance is $1 billion, but the federal government says that balance should be much
Well, indeed, if you don't mind, I'm going to ask, both Rob and Pat to come up and talk about that. But I mean, I will tell you, this is the best replenishment of funding for UI that has ever occurred in the state of Illinois.
Yeah, no. Yeah, thank you for the question, because certainly paying off the balance that's due to federal borrowing because of the pandemic is really important to the state, as well as injecting cash into the system to help prepare for the future. But two of the reforms that were also included was, as Leader Holmes described, expanding the taxable wage base, which is going to lead to additional solvency in the future, and also increasing that target fund balance. That's the target in the trust fund that's been at $1 billion for almost 2 decades now, and it's going to be increased by a historic 75% to $1.75 billion. That's the amount that triggers employer taxation up and down that would create greater solvency in the future in the system. And all the modeling that I have seen under this proposal shows positive balances that will help us endure even if we enter a recession, in the near future or down the road.
That doesn't require legislative approval, that can be done by
This is part of the legislation that will be brought to the legislature shortly.
A couple weeks ago, Peter, you called for another cash injection into the rainy day fund. What does this agree to?
Well, we're still going to need to inject more into the rainy day fund. Just, hitting the 5% mark of an annual budget is a beginning of a good place for the state to be. That would get $2.3 billion in the fund. This is over a 10-year period, $450 million being paid back from the UI Trust Fund into the rainy day fund. That's not enough. And so we're still going to have to talk to the legislature with hopefully bipartisan support for the new budget and the money that we'll be able to take from, frankly, good fiscal management and the surpluses that we brought to the budget over the course of FY23.
Our Republican friends, voices in my head say that we're about to get barraged with email news releases and blog posts saying that this is a bunch of hooey, Illinois is still in bad shape, we're on the wrong track, blah, blah, blah. How do the Republicans counter that? Or are you just here to give cover to it? Those comments are coming from somebody.
Well, thank you for that question. I would say that we're in unprecedented times. I've sat on the Unemployment Insurance Trust Fund negotiating team for 12 years, and the last time we had a major negotiation was clear back in 2013. Because of the pandemic, we went from almost a $2 billion surplus in the Unemployment Insurance Trust Fund to a negative over $4 billion negative in the trust fund. Now, the way that the fund's supposed to work, businesses are supposed to replenish the fund by paying more taxes and or benefits are increased or decreased. That's how the fund works. Because of the pandemic, not only our state, but the states across the entire country have gone from significant, I would say, fund balances to extremely negative, large fund balances, that this took unusual circumstance, and many of us to sit at the table and figure out how are we going to solve this. If you look at the other states in this situation, they did the same. They used the federal money to help replenish the budget to get it to zero, and then business and the union stepped up to figure out how then to get us to a plus $1.7 billion net surplus, which should take us through, should we have any downturn in the economy, which will provide stability for businesses in the future, which is incredibly important, and also provide for the worker the ability to know that their benefits will not be cut. So, all in all, we understand that some people may not like this, but considering where we were in unprecedented times after the pandemic, this is a good bill, and many other states, if you follow the other states across the entire country, the majority of the states went through this entire process as well.
I just want to point out that the person asking that last question has been named Father of the Year and is flanked by his 2 sons, Isaac and Clifford. And sorry, before I take your question, which I will do, when I walked in the room, the score between USA and Iran was 1-0. Has that changed, anybody? Go Team USA. All right, yes, sir. The Chicago Tribune, yes, sir.
As Senator President was saying, it's an employer-funded system traditionally. Why is it worth it to taxpayers as a whole to use more than $4 billion of federal relief money and surplus state revenue to fill this hole rather than allowing employers?
Look, everybody's stepping up here. This was an unprecedented pandemic. The number of deaths, the number of jobs lost, the depth of the recession that we all endured. This is what we needed to do. And everybody came to the table with their ideas. I will say that everybody's mentioned Kristen Richards. I'll do it one more time at IDS because I think she ran 100 or more models for this team, and it was necessary in order to get to where we got to, which was really a good result and a bipartisan result.
Governor, another item, of course, on this veto session agenda is the SAFE Act. Can you please be clear? You said you made known to the legislators what you want done, but can you now make it apparent to all of us what needs to be in, from your opinion, that legislation, and does it need to be done this week?
Sure, Amanda, I could take you back to 17 different moments in which I answered your question. I will do it one more time. And that is that it is very important that we address the misunderstandings, the misinformation that exists about the Safety Act. Changes to the Safety Act certainly should include making clear what the purpose of no cash bail is, making sure that people are not in counties across Illinois led to believe that they should be flinging the jail doors open on January 1. That's not what the legislation says. But I do think that, again, Republicans and Democrats are talking about what items should be in the changes in the trailer bill that is being considered. Many of the Republicans are actually state's attorneys and sheriffs and others that are at the table, as well as perhaps a few of the members of the General Assembly. But there is a bill that's in the works. I couldn't tell you at this moment exactly where that bill is, but that is the real purpose of getting a bill done. Is there are tweaks and changes and clarifications that need to be made. I think we all agree on that, and so they're hard at work doing that. I'm sorry, Mike. Yes, and I think we should pass a bill that tweaks. No, I think that we should pass it now. We should pass the changes, the trailer bill now, and it should go into effect as intended on January 1.
Tensions between progressives and progressive Democrats and moderate Democrats over changes to the Safety Act over the last several months. What kinds of obstacles have those tensions presented? The governor's office, lawmakers, everybody involved in the negotiations as they roll tweaks to the law.
What did Will Rogers say about the Democratic Party? I don't belong to an organized party. I'm a Democrat. Of course, there are lots of opinions that go into crafting legislation, but I do think that there is a widespread understanding about quite a number of things that will therefore be in the trailer bill. So if there are disagreements, I know they're working on them right now, and that a bill will be presented.
Governor, President Biden urged Congress to step in for the strike is moving. Where do you stand on that? Illinois has 75 on railroads.
Congress should step in, and we need to make sure that we're, one of the reasons that we invested in our transportation infrastructure in Illinois is we are the best positioned to take advantage of all of the shipping and cargo that's going on across the country. Railroads are extraordinarily important, especially right now, because, of course, we're having trouble with barges on the Mississippi. And so we've got to do something. We cannot have a situation in which the supply chain is cut off because there is a mass railroad strike.
Governor, just the Safety Act, just to clarify, you would not support changing the effective dates of the
I do not believe we're going to have to even talk about that because I believe there will be a bill over the course of the next 2 days.
How might the bill change the things that we said?
Again, I'm going to let the negotiators do the work here and come up with their presentation. We've got our people in the room as well. I don't want to mess with that, but I think there will be a good bill that will be presented. Yes. No, they're not generalities. It's very specific that we shouldn't be flinging the doors open on January 1 with the misinformation that's been put out there as the driver of that. Let's fix that.
Currently, places where judges don't have as much discretion Jersey model where the judges do have discretion in every case?
There's quite a lot of discretion that's given in the process of the Safety Act bill. Look, I believe that this bill is a good bill that has some necessary changes that will be in the next 2 days presented to the General Assembly. So let's let that happen.
Can you expand on, with a super duper majority, Democrats can do whatever they want? Now, why is it more complicated than that? On this right now?
Well, that means at least beginning in January, there'll be 78 opinions in the House of Representatives on the Democratic side, not to mention the 40 members of the Republican caucus. Everyone comes here of independent mind, and every bill that gets brought up is considered in independent fashion. But yeah, there's a lot of agreement on one side and the other side. You know, I don't believe that the fact that there are majorities of Democrats in both the House and the Senate means that everything that you know, one Democrat might want is going to happen. That people do come together around ideas, and there has been a lot of bipartisanship. I think you saw that certainly in my first year in office, and you've seen it periodically throughout my term in office, not to mention the folks who've been here for many years on the floor of the General Assembly working together with Republicans. I just want to make sure I'm getting at least somebody who hasn't been. Okay, are you representing NBC now? Is that, go ahead.
Yes, whether Michigan or Minnesota are likely to move up as one of the first states to vote in 2024. Is that disappointing to Illinois that we probably won't get that spot?
Oh, I would have preferred if Illinois doesn't get it. I would have preferred that we did. You know, we are most representative of the demographics of the entire United States, and I think being able to win Illinois in a primary is important for whoever's running to demonstrate that they can win nationally.
What are you doing to guarantee that we won't get that spot?
Say again?
What are you doing to help us get the spot?
Oh, I've been working very hard for both the Democratic Convention to come to Chicago and to try to get Illinois to become one of the first states in the primaries. And you know, you have to try for something in order to get it. We've been working very hard, especially on the convention. Is something that I've been directly involved with. The Democratic Party of Illinois initiated the process, and I'm glad of it, and I've been supportive of it for Illinois to be the first primary.
All right, thanks. President Martin,
Thank you.
can you